Hi, I am Pratim Ranjan Bose, and you are watching Podcast with Pratim, presented by Iravati Research and Communication Center, or IRCC. In this episode, we will discuss Bangladesh. I have with me Professor and former Indian Ambassador to Bangladesh, Veena Sikri. She was Indian High Commissioner to Bangladesh during 2003 and 2006, when BNP was in power. Madam, India withdrew the transshipment facility to Bangladesh. I'm leaving the official statements out. This is surely a retaliatory step and a painful step because we worked and promoted regional cooperation for quite some time. What were the provocations behind such action? Over to you, madam.
Asked a very specific question about transshipment, and let me explain that this was a very special facility given by the Indian government to Bangladesh to help Bangladesh exports to third countries, because Bangladesh logistics facilities aren't that well developed, and there's one major airport, Dhaka, to a smaller extent Chittagong, and then even smaller extent Sylhet also. But even the ports get congested a lot, and in the garments business, when there's so many deadlines to meet, allowed the Bangladesh exporters to export their goods from Indian ports, so that they could use the land customs to come into India and then go to the nearest airport, whether Kolkata or Delhi, and export their products. In the beginning, it took some time for the Bangladesh exporters to get used to it, but in the last 2-3 years, they were using it enormously because their exports were going up. There was big demand all over the world for Bangladesh products. This increasing use in the last few years of the Indian ports facilities, including the land into the airport, had created its own backlog for Indian exporters, particularly at the airports. So I think this was one of the reasons that the Indian exporters had been telling the government that, this facility, either you expand the facilities and have more for everyone so that the facilities become bigger, but till the facilities are overall, the capacity is improved, it was felt that at the first step, they would stop the use of these facilities by Bangladesh exporters. But I must focus on the fact that this transshipment decision, does not in any way affect regional trade. So any goods coming from Bangladesh, which are meant for road transport to Nepal or Bhutan or even Myanmar, there would be no problem at all with that. So this trans-regional cooperation in any way, anything that is happening under BBIN that involves road transport, that would continue. So it really is not for that, but it's part of the overall.
Transshipment is not transit. So every other thing is open.
Yes, that's right. Transit is not affected at all. Transshipment is affected. Yes.
Okay. Madam, the entire 8-month stay of Dr. Yunus' administration was filled with controversies. There were repeated reference of Northeast India, Siliguri corridor, etc. In fact, it started from August 6, 2 days before Dr. Yunus took over. His close confidant and minister even vented out the aspiration to include Northeast into Bangladesh. That apart, Yunus' administration invited Chinese participation in at least 2 projects near the Siliguri corridor. It had also recently entered into an agreement with China for development of Mongla Port, which is close to West Bengal coastline. How does India read these developments? Over to you.
Well, I think that one must clearly recognize where Mohammed Yunus is coming from. Actually, one should recognize that Mohammed Yunus himself has very little power. He has no power of his own. He's just acting at the behest of the Jamaat-e-Islami. And that's what he's doing all the time. I would say Jamaat-e-Islami and all the other Islamist groups. For example, Hizb ut-Tahrir, his own special assistant Mahfouz Alam is openly said to be a member of the Hizb ut-Tahrir. He may personally deny it, but it's written by everyone in Bangladesh that he's a member of the Hizb ut-Tahrir. And now, after being special assistant for a few weeks, he's now become an advisor. So he's a minister in this interim regime. So he is there. Jamaat-e-Islami is the power behind the throne. Hifazat-e-Islam is in also an advisor to the in the interim regime, also in the ministerial status. Hifazat-e-Islam is another important organization. It's not a political party, but it's an organization. And the person who is there from the Hifazat-e-Islam is also advisor to the Islami Andolan Bangladesh, which is another Islamist party in Bangladesh. So you can see quite clearly that it is the Islamic power, because you must realize quite clearly that what we're talking about is what is described as a takhta palat, as a coup, as a regime change. It is not at all a spontaneous students-led uprising, as some people in Bangladesh would have us believe. I mean, Muhammad Yunus in the beginning kept talking about it being a spontaneous student uprising, but he himself let the cat out of the bag in New York when he was speaking in September at the Clinton Global Initiative. And he tells a big audience that please don't think it happened like that. It was and he invited Mahfouz Alam onto the stage and introduced him as the mastermind behind whatever happened. So I think this is very clear to understand that what has happened is a regime change operation. It is not a spontaneous student uprising under any circumstances. And the powers in charge today are those that lost in 1971. Those who lost in 1971 were Pakistan. They were the Jamaat-e-Islami. They were the Razakars. Today, who are backed wholly and wholeheartedly by Pakistan, and the Razakar forces are all with them. Even the BNP now is not on the same page for many things with this group. So I think that one has to realize that obviously when this group of people who for 54 years have been sort of, burning away at their loss at the creation of Bangladesh are now trying to undo that creation. And now trying to undo that creation and again create something, what they talked about openly about creating a federation. And what you have said about Banglastan and, getting in the Northeast, getting in West Bengal, out when the Jamaat-e-Islami was part of Begum Khaleda Zia's government. It is a complete repeat. In that sense, for me, there's already some sense of deja vu because I saw all this happen. They were talking about this. They were talking about taking over the Northeast. And, it's completely unacceptable for India. It's completely provocative. It is unnecessary. It crosses India's security red lines, and it's unacceptable.
Okay. The new Bangladesh has a love for Pakistan. We all know about the history of SARC and the emergence of BBIN sub-regional group. Dr. Yunus wants SARC to, play around. He wants to revive SARC. Obviously, SARC means Pakistan. I did not hear him referring BBIN. I might be wrong, but I did not find it. Meanwhile, there are reports of Pakistani ISI activities. There are also unconfirmed reports of combat training. BBC reported at least 300 prisoners linked to terror were released on bail. The list includes as deadly names as the chief of Ansarullah Bangla team. We were stunned actually to see that he is coming out of jail and getting a hero's welcome. This is over and above the escape of 700 prisoners. Some say that there were many high-risk prisoners from one of the jails. How serious is the terror threat perception from Bangladesh? Over to you, madam.
Serious, absolutely serious. They can be, I think it's very worrisome because, again, this is a reflection of Jamaat-e-Islami's control, because you are seeing that all the people who are being released are those belonging to Jamaat-e-Islami and other terrorist organizations. You mentioned the ABT, Ansarullah Bangla team, and others who were imprisoned during the time of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. They were imprisoned after being tried for various terrorist acts, and they were in jail. And the first thing, even if, Muhammad Yunus could swear himself in on the 8th of August, you had two things happening. You had these terrorists being released from jail. They just walked out. There were just hundreds of people who would come, terrorize the jail authorities, break open the doors and release these people. And then you had the attacks on the minorities. on the Hindus, the Buddhists, the Christians, the Sufis, the Ahmadiyyas. All these attacks took place immediately that Sheikh Hasina left the country. So it shows very clearly what was the target and who were those authorities behind this regime change who now felt that the moment Sheikh Hasina has left, we are in charge, we are going to do what we want. This is not, as I said, Mohammed Yunus is not, he's just doing what other people tell him to do. I don't think he's in control at all.
Okay. Now, let's move over to politics, and I find it in a stalemate. Main support groups of Dr. Yunus do not want election. They are happy with unaccounted power. Partly because they will not get votes, both Jamaat and the students. BNP is a favorite in the next election, but they are apparently not putting enough pressure on the government to hold election. Some say they are waiting for India to clarify stand. However, most are intrigued by the headless state of the party. 8 months since Hasina's fall, Tariq Rahman did not return to Bangladesh. It is not clear if he is restricted by legal bars. Khaleda Zia is unwell and went to London for treatment. How do you read these developments?
One thing is very clear, that the people behind Mohammed Yunus, they find him a very convenient prop for heading an interim government. This interim government is unconstitutional. It is illegitimate. Actually, I must tell you that even the Bangladesh authorities themselves accept that. I was on a panel discussion recently where a participant was the present press minister from the Bangladesh High Commission in Delhi. And when I questioned him on this, he said, yes, it is an unconstitutional government. So now the problem is that when you have how can they exercise any authority? This is what is completely, mystifying even for the people of Bangladesh, because the only job of an interim regime, actually, this government was sworn in on a constitution which has no provision for an interim government or a caretaker government. That provision had been taken out. But even if you assume that, yes, this government is now trying to bring that back by some means or the other, nobody knows whether that will be valid or not. Even if the role of a caretaker government is only to stay for 3 months and to organize free, fair, and inclusive elections.
Extendable up to, the original was 3 months, extendable up by another 3 months.
No, they cannot extend it. At the most, they say that if there's when there's a breakdown of law and order and you need time to bring back law and order, then maybe in that time even the military can be in charge to bring back law and order. But then ultimately a caretaker, a neutral, non-party caretaker government. These are the two biggest criteria of a caretaker government. It has to be neutral, has to be non-party. Now this regime is neither neutral nor non-party. It has the Islamist parties in their number. And it is not neutral at all, because all they're interested is in killing the Awami League people and throwing them in jail on murder charges. It has gagged the media completely. The media is completely gagged in Bangladesh. Nobody writes anything. Whether it's the Pratham, whether it is Daily Star, they're not writing anything on their own. They're only writing what they are told to write. And that is the tragedy of what is happening in Bangladesh today, that, the people are being completely, fed a lot of misinformation or disinformation. And I think that these elections free, fair, and inclusive. That is what the effort should be. The BNP, you're quite right. Mirza Fakhr Chaudhry, they had a meeting with Mohammed Yunus just yesterday, I think, and they came out saying that they're completely dissatisfied with that meeting because they've got no assurances on when the elections will be held. The Jamaat-e-Islami is playing a kind of a double game. They're saying, oh, yes, you must have the election before the next Ramadan. And then on the other hand, they are telling Mohammed Yunus, you must be there for 5 years and so on and so forth. And the other disturbing part is that all kinds of so-called reforms are being planned by this illegitimate, unconstitutional interim regime. How can any regime which is not representative of the people, how can they go on and do reforms? The task of constitutional reforms can only be done by an elected government. And I know that the people of Bangladesh are very attached, very particular about their democracy. And all the time that, in the last few years, there's huge anti-incumbency against Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, and, the elections were not fair. But in those elections, the BNP refused to take part. If they had taken part, I can tell you, even in the 2024 election, if they had taken part, they may well have won, because the people would have been so excited about seeing, legitimate
But they did take
opposition
part in
being there. They would have
2018
come
and
and
Hasina
insisted on
rigged
passing.
that election, isn't it?
Well, look, I'm not going into all of that. I know that in each of these elections, there were international observers. Even in the 2024 elections, there were international observers from not only from India, but from many other countries. And they have given their own certification for the election. So out of that, I mean, is completely incorrect. On the other hand, even this regime, Mohammed Yunus interim regime, they said, oh, that the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has undertaken so many killings and mass murder, July uprising, and they even invited Volker Turk from the UN Human Rights Commission to come and do a report. But we've seen his report. He says categorically in that report that he has not been given any evidence to assign individual guilt. So he's come to a clear conclusion that nobody can blame for that. So I mean to say that it's very clear. So all this talk about, so-called uprising and all this is nothing. And the advisor was initially appointed as the home advisor, Shekawat Hussain. He actually came out and said that we need to do an inquiry, because how did those, these police weapons get into other people's hands? And the students were killing with those weapons. That's not how that happened. They should be, and immediately he was removed from his post. We know that. And we do know that the 400 police stations were burnt. How come there's no inquiry into that? Who burned those police stations? Who killed 1,200 policemen? The families of those policemen want answers, but they're not being given any explanation, any credible reason. So much so that the police is still not back to its full strength. At the same time, the Hindus and the Hindus who were there in the police force are being removed one by one. They're being forced to resign. They're not being appointed. There were a whole lot of those who had received the letters of appointment. They've been removed. They've been taken back. Hindu professors have been forced to resign, and Hindu teachers have been forced to resign. So there's the complete playbook of the Jamaat-e-Islami.
Not only Hindus,
It's
I
what
mean, whoever they think are political opponents have
Buddhist
been.
and Christian. I would say that I began by saying that on the 5th of August onwards, it was the Hindus, the Buddhists, the Christians, the Sufis, and the Ahmadiyyas. All of them were attacked and treated in the most horrendous manner possible. And that's continuing even till today. Although there's a cloak of deniability, and they're blaming it on the Indian media, but that's fallen very thin, because the day that our foreign secretary went there in December 2024, and he gave all the evidence, the very next day the Mohammed Yunus interim regime said, oh yes, there had been many incidents and 70 people have been arrested. How come, after saying all this months, the figment of the Indian media imagination and so on, suddenly people are arrested? But we don't know what happened to those cases, and the attacks are continuing.
Right.
People's lives, the Hindus, the Buddhists, the Christians, all the minorities. President Trump spoke about it. He spoke about the chaos and the attacks, the barbarous attacks on the Hindus and the Christians. He spoke about that himself, showing how there's a universal, worry, concern about what is happening in Bangladesh.
Yes. Yes. In fact, the very trial, there was a lot of people have died, but there was no truth and reconciliation kind of stuff. I mean, so that is, there is demand, but that didn't happen. So, essentially, its things are moving from one extreme to another extreme kind of situation. Madam, now I'm taking you back to your days in Bangladesh. The BNP rule during 2001 and 6 was synonymous to violence and anti-India activities. Incidentally, it was also the period when India Tata Group came out with a huge FDI offer. That was a time when 10-truck arms all case happened. There was 148 plus camps of northeastern ultras that India identified. That's apart from the general law and order situation, atrocities against minorities, blasts, grenade attack on Hasina, etc., etc. So What is your expectation from BNP this time? Apparently, they are now at loggerheads with Jamaat. That is what they say also. They say that there is minimal chance of BNP Jamaat coalition this time. Do you believe that BNP can remove the Jamaat tag? Jamaat was their ground force. Over to you.
Yeah, I fully agree with what you described as the situation that prevailed when BNP was in power between 2001 and 2006. And it was a complete lawlessness because they wanted, by all means, for Pakistan to have a leading role in Bangladesh. So all that you're seeing now, you spoke about the combat training and you spoke about the ISI officers' visit, and now we know the Foreign Secretary of Pakistan is now in Bangladesh. All these things were happening at that time. And there was a lot of interaction between Bangladesh and Pakistan. And in fact, at that time also it was said by the community that no promotion of a Bangladesh senior army officer could take place without the clearance of the Pakistan High Commission. You know, it was that bad. It was a complete interaction. You spoke about the camps. Yes, there were lots of camps, and when we were pointing this out to the Bangladesh authorities, they would just move the camp and say, "Yes, come and see. There's no camp here." And so we saw that all this was completely acting against the interests of India. The Jamaat-e-Islami was really ruling the roost at that time. Now, what we are seeing, first, let me explain how in the interim 15 years between 2009 and Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina left Bangladesh. In these interim years, in these 15 years, when Sheikh Hasina was Prime Minister, she recognized and respected India's security red lines. And that is the one reason why the relationship between India and Bangladesh prospered and grew from strength to strength. I used to always say this to the Bangladesh BNP government when I was High Commissioner in Bangladesh. Please respect India's security red lines and India's security considerations. If you do that, the sky is the limit for the development of the cooperation. We clearly saw that in the last 15 years, because Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina had clearly said that there is no interest for her in encouraging anti-India terrorism from Bangladesh soil. She said this is of no benefit to the people of Bangladesh. What is of benefit to the people of Bangladesh is economic growth and development. And that is what she gave to them. And India and Bangladesh cooperated together. You had 6 to 7% growth rate for 15 years. Bangladesh graduated out of the LDC category. I think they're going to go right back into it now, it looks like. But so this is what had happened. Now, we have slid back completely to what it was between 2001 and 2006 and worse. But coming to the point of the BNP that you were making, I think, in my view, I think there is a split in the BNP. I think there is a portion of the BNP led by General Secretary Mirza Fakhrulla Chowdhury, who is very much aware of the historical relevance of the BNP, of their position, of their role, how, that Zia Rahman was a freedom fighter, the founder of the BNP, very much a part of the history of the Liberation War. And they want that respect for Zia Rahman to remain. And they want his memory to remain. And so they are very much against what the Jamaat-e-Islami is doing about, on terrorism, on Islamist groups, on making these strong anti-India statements every day, and like Mohammed Yunus is offering Northeast states to China, and, they're talking about the Siliguri corridor, offering an Air Force base development to Pakistan and China in Lal Munir. All the projects that Sheikh Hasina had offered to India, including the Tisa water management project, which she had clearly said this project should go to India and not to China, including the Mongla port development project. These are now being taken and given to China. On what authority? There is no legitimacy to this government. They have no authority to do anything of all this, but they're just going ahead and doing it. And soon you're going to find that the people are going to be completely fed up of this kind of a situation. Because what happens on the ground, nothing happens. You just think that, and China thinks they've got this and that and the other, and but I think they should recognize that India's security red lines remain sacrosanct. And if they are crossed, there will be consequences.
Okay, that's very important highlight. And so you are expecting this BNP is popular this time, and you're expecting BNP to understand that this time.
Yes, many people in the BNP who do understand that. And there are many people who have been interacting with India all along the years. I mean, even in 2024, I can tell you that all the BNP leaders who interacted with Indian leaders and who came across to India, they were told, please go and participate in the elections. That is very, very important. Please take part in the elections. And the very fact of the BNP taking part in the elections would have meant that they would have been free, fair, and inclusive elections. And that was something that was told to them all the time. But I think they decided, I think there was pressure on them from some quarters not to take part in the elections. And ultimately, they succumbed to that pressure. Because actually, all this was a build-up, because this regime change operation was not planned in one day, but certainly went into a lot of very careful planning. And one can see that part of the planning was to not allow BNP to take part in the elections so that, they could be declared as illegitimate or whatever they were called. But today, I think, yes, that BNP itself is interested that Awami League must be allowed to take part in the elections. They have been saying so themselves. They have been saying so themselves that it must be free, fair, and inclusive. They are not at all in a way, because they know, they very well realize that if they are trying to organize elections which are not inclusive, then they will be tarred with the same brush that they have been trying to tar Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina with all this while. So there is no use of that. If this will also be illegitimate. So there is no point in talking about elections, anything else than free, fair, and inclusive. Only if they are free, fair, and inclusive will they have legitimacy for the people of Bangladesh. Beyond the legitimacy for the rest of the world, it is a legitimacy for the people of Bangladesh. And I think that is extremely important for everybody to realize. I think the BNP realizes it more than most. And they know what the Jamaat-e-Islami is trying. The Jamaat-e-Islami was a coalition partner with 2001, 2006. And now this time, Jamaat-e-Islami is showing no interest at all. Rather, the Amir of the Jamaat-e-Islami had been having meetings of all the Islamist groups and telling them that we must stay together, and then we can increase our vote share from that few 4 to 5% to, and similarly, the National Citizen Party, the so-called Students' Party, it's not a students' party. There are many other groupings of that kind which have come up. Bangladesh Students' League, this and that. It's not a united force at all. And they also know that they will not get anything more than a very minuscule portion of the vote. But they are trying to establish their control on the universities, on the youth vote, and so on. And they want time for that. This time, they should not be allowed to them at all.
Okay. Okay. Do you have any timeline in mind for the election? Do you have any timeline?
I would say as soon as possible. I would say definitely before the end of this year. Definitely, because we are already in the month of April. And if you look at a situation where you bring the law and order situation back to normal, where the Election Commission will complete its work, I think end of the year, before December, naturally, having elections in the monsoons is very difficult. So, you're looking at a period after September. So somewhere between October and December, the election should be held.
Okay. That's a very tough deadline. Okay. Madam, Awami League went into the underground after August 5. But then their leaders, we all know that their leaders are out here or some other places. But the party is coming out. It has been coming out in small, they were organizing small marches and etc. and going to jails. Now, yesterday or day before, there was a very significant march in Dhaka. It had a decent gathering. So, do you expect that Awami League will be, able to stay afloat in the electoral politics? I mean, obviously, their popularity has to be down because of whatever has happened. But could they remain there in the electoral politics, and henceforth, can we find them stepping up the heat?
Well, let me tell you quite clearly. I think at the end of this 8-month period, or whatever it is, less than 8, not almost 9 months now. I think today I can say the Awami League vote bank is more or less intact. I think today in Bangladesh, you are hearing more and more people saying, where is the rickshaw driver and others, Aage bhalo chilo. It was better before. They're saying that openly. What is happening now? People are losing jobs. The economy is in the total doldrums. All the factories are closed, and even more are getting closed. You know that you're talking about, you began by asking me about announcing that he will not allow cotton yarn from India to come across the land border. Why is he doing that? Because he wants to increase the price of Indian cotton yarn so that what is coming from Pakistan or even from USA can compete, but it cannot. There's too much of a difference, and we know that. Why did he announce it? You didn't. I don't know why you didn't ask me that question. Why has he announced all these difficulties? He is closing down the border trade. He is closing down all the interaction between the people of India and Bangladesh that was happening before. Why is he doing it? He's scared. He wants to the India feeling that nobody in Bangladesh will think about India in a good way. But this just cannot sustain itself for any length of time. And I think that, it's all is an effort. And there was a Turkish delegation which came and said, oh, don't worry, Mr. Mohammed Yunus, we will give you whatever India was giving you earlier. So he's actively soliciting countries to give goods to Bangladesh, which were earlier being sent by India. There are strong anti-Indian steps that he's taking. And I don't know what is object told by the Jamaat-e-Islami to do this.
Yeah, I mean, there are many learned people in Bangladesh who understand that doing that with your next door neighbor, a major economy, is not going to do good to you. So I'm sure. But anyway, we all know that anti-India rhetorics have always been part of the opposition politics in Bangladesh. So that was, in some extent, that was there. Thanks for your time.